Well, California is looking at the possibility, this statewide ballot initiative to legalize pot, Proposition 19, of being one of the first states to do so and actually tax it. City of Oakland ahead of the curve. They're actually they want to be big time in the growing business. Hey, agriculture. California is an agricultural state, right? A lot of research has been done on marijuana. Research done at UCLA, for example, and Harvard. It finds pot is useful for glaucoma, epilepsy, muscular spasms, reducing tumors, controlling nausea for cancer, chemotherapy, emphysema, migraine, depression, anorexia. I've got a long list here. It's really some very startling and impressive research. Why would anybody be opposed to this? Paul Chabot is actually opposed to it. He is with the drugfreecalifornia.org website and an organization. He's the founder and spokesperson for the Coalition for Drug-Free California. Paul, welcome to the program. Paul?
Yes, this is Paul.
Yeah, hey, you're on the air.
Oh, great. Hey, thanks so much for having me today with Coalition for Drug-Free California. And we've rallied with business leaders, religious leaders, community folks, parents like myself to fight back against drug legalization here in California. And we feel real good about what's coming on the ballot in November and the fact that we feel we're going to defeat this initiative and send a resounding message not just around California but around the rest of the nation that this is not a way to somehow pay for taxes, deficits, etc., that this is bad for the communities, and we can do a lot better for our youth.
So I assume if you're serious about California becoming drug-free, that you're going to join with the Mormon Church and the Orthodox Muslims in calling for an outright ban on alcohol and caffeine.
Well, and that's a great point. You know, we've got enough problems in our country already because of alcohol. And now that we've added drugs to that problem, we've got an 8-to-1 ratio.
Alcohol's not a drug?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Caffeine's not a drug?
Well, you could go down the list, and where are we going to stop with that?
Well, I'll stop with those two.
Okay, well, let's start with alcohol.
Those two are two that you've got a couple of major religions, Mormonism, a major branch of Christianity, and large chunks of the Muslim world say those two are drugs that are dangerous. You shouldn't go near them. And I'm saying if you're going to be consistent, you should be joining with the Muslims and the Muslims and the Mormons in saying no. Let's ban all drugs.
Well, I really appreciate your concern for that. I would say as a community, as a society, are we better off with alcohol? And if we look at the problems we have, I think we got a lot of problems. And we look at National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, 8-to-1 ratio. We now have more people driving high on our highways than from alcohol. And so
a lot of those high in that statistic, though, a lot of the high in that statistic is from prescription drugs. In fact, the majority of it is from prescription drugs. And, most of those are given. It's amazing. 1 in 10 Americans right now is on a psychoactive prescription drug. And that's what that study is quoting.
Yeah, and, we have a huge problem in this
pot.
country, and I was going to get to that as well. Prescription drug abuse is a big problem. It's overtaken marijuana usage as one of our number one concerns for youth.
Right, so let's put marijuana forward as an alternative to it.
Oh, that would be a complete joke. We already have a disaster here in California.
It's less toxic than alcohol.
No, your facts are completely wrong.
How many people in the United States die from alcohol every year?
You're going to mention one of about 8 pro-drug arguments that people will throw up.
No, I'm saying very seriously. I'm assuming that you realize that over 50,000 people die in this country every year from alcohol poisoning, from cirrhosis of the liver. They die not from the consequences of being high on alcohol, but from alcohol itself. How many people in the United States in the last decade have died from a pot overdose?
Well, that's a typical, very
liberal
pro-drug argument. No, let me finish my point, sir.
Well, I'm just curious how many have died.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but what I will tell you is this.
How about zero?
More people enter drug rehabilitation for marijuana than all other drugs combined. And I'm one of them. I went through rehab for pot when I was a kid. I used to be on your side of this issue, and then I grew up. Here's the difference in California. Back in 1996, the voters passed an initiative, Prop 215, which legitimized marijuana for medicinal purposes. Most California voters today know it's a complete joke because in California you can get pot for anything, hair loss, itchy skin, high heel pain, you name it. And now we're seeing more cities, over 200 of them, banning marijuana dispensaries. Oakland is a complete anomaly. And it's a joke, and it's an embarrassment to our state. Most people today are standing up against pot and against drug legalization, which is why we're going to defeat this initiative in November.
So here we have alcohol, which actually kills people, which impairs people so badly that it's responsible for an additional 50,000 deaths a year on our highways. And it seems to be, and is highly addictive, far more addictive and habit-forming than pot. And you want to keep alcohol legal and you want to ban pot. And not only that, I mean, look at these studies that show that marijuana is actually it's more effective than the prescription drugs on the market for reducing the pressure inside eyeballs associated with glaucoma. Doesn't have the side effects.
Your facts are wrong. Your facts are wrong. And let me show this to you.
I'm quoting a study done at the University of California in Los Angeles.
Okay, look, you're talking about glaucoma. When people smoke pot, it reduces the pressure at that instant when they're smoking the joint. When they let it down, their pressure goes right back up. What happens is the pro-drug folks will latch onto any positive niche they can see and completely ignore.
This study was done with marijuana tablets.
Oh, okay. Now let's talk about that. Are we talking about Marinol?
This study was done with tetrahydrocannabinol,
okay,
THC.
Now I'll tell you, Californians here like myself, we support the research into this, and we stand behind Marinol, which is a federally approved drug. There's also a new drug out there called Sativex, which looks at THC. So there are benefits that the federal government has shown through Marinol. Our argument has been with this smoked crude weed, which people are standing on the backs of sick people calling this magic medicine, and it's not. Smoked dope, like we're seeing on our California streets and communities, has become a runaway joke, so much so that these drug legalizers have pushed away the very base they were hoping to bring into their corners. They've exploited this system, and we're fed up.
Yeah, well, I strongly believe, having used both pot and alcohol in my life, it's been probably 20 years since I used pot, but certainly as a teenager, liberally tried it, that there's no comparison. I mean, pot, alcohol can do you real damage. Alcohol can, just knock you down dumb. Alcohol.
Sure.
I've seen so many lives destroyed by alcohol. I've known so many, over the course. I'm old enough to have seen a lot of the people that I grew up with turn into alcoholics. I can think of one person I know who in his 50s is still using drugs, and his problem wasn't pot. His problem was heroin.
So do you think we should ban alcohol?
No, I'm saying that no kind of prohibition works. We tried banning alcohol. It didn't work. It created a giant crime industry. We tried banning pot, and it has created a giant crime industry. And I get it that you want to be moralistic about this. I think you should join the Mormons or the Muslims and ask people to join your cult and say, yes, we will make an oath not to do this and do it person by person. But when you try to make it state policy and enforce it with guns in prisons, it doesn't work.
No, the guns in prisons is a complete rumor. Less than 0.5% of people are in prison are there for marijuana distribution. We talk about the crime on our streets, and one of the points that you mentioned was, crime, prohibition. First off, prohibition worked. Okay, prohibition worked. Yes, we had crime, and there will always be crime. Drug cartels in Mexico. My dissertation was on Mexican
Prohibition worked? My dad used to tell me stories of living on the south side of Chicago and walking down to one of Al Capone's speakeasies to get a bucket of beer for his dad, my grandfather.
That is a very typical argument. But we look at the consumption, which dropped. Sure, there's always going to be crime.
Legal consumption dropped.
We have a $1 billion black market of tobacco here in this country, which is legitimized and legalized. Just because you legalize something doesn't push a black market underground.
Well, much of that black market is actually state-to-state avoidance of taxation. That's,
it's still a crime.
If you had a federal tax that was consistent across the country, you wouldn't have that problem.
Look, there's a lot of issues here. I know we're running out of time here, but I'll tell you what. As a dad, the last thing I want is a pro-pot state here in California, and we're going to.
Okay, people can check out your website at drugfreecalifornia.org. Paul Chabot. Paul, thanks for coming on and talking
You're welcome.
with us.
Bye.
I appreciate it.